that you don't run out, right? So I'm not necessarily talking about stock of what I have to pour, but today I want to just talk to you about taking some inventory of who is in your life. There's something that I say all the time. I got it from one of my son's coaches years and years and years ago. You've got to know your personnel. You got to. It's important. It's important to take inventory of your personnel. That would be the people in your life, in, around, outside of. Don't go too far outside. But you have to take inventory of your personnel. Taking inventory now is being observant. Being observant and taking heed to not just your experiences with them, but taking heed to their conversation about their experiences with other people. Listening to responses, watching actions, and making a determination with the facts about who these people are, what they stand for, characteristics, character, integrity, or lack thereof. And it's important because when you know your personnel, you have a better opportunity of managing your expectations of them, which is vitally important for your peace of mind if you have any kind of relationship. I'm talking family, friends, romantic relationship. It's important to know your personnel. Because what I like to say also is that uncommunicated expectation always yields to disappointment. You can't expect people to even be willing to live up to your expectations of them without communicating to them what those expectations are. Granted, some things are just written, drawn out, flowing through the DNA of each and every person. Hence why you need to know your personnel. You'll be able to see what things are just embedded and what things you might have to communicate to give them an opportunity to say, yeah, I can do that, or I don't have the capacity. Also, what I like to say is consistency yields expectation. When you take time to take inventory of your personnel, you can kind of gauge what your expectations of them should be, what is realistic, because more times than not, when people have a tendency to show up in a way, time after time, not just with you, but with their own personnel, you have how can I say this, a reasonable expectation of how they possibly will show up when it comes to you. I think that it's a game changer, right? For you to determine who you can talk to and what subject matters they are able to handle, who you can trust, who you should keep at a distance, and who you could bring close into your trusted circle, your inner circle. That's what we call it, your inner circle. And so I'm not saying you have to drop everything, but I think that it is a must do to kind of go over who's currently in your life, and then do an evaluation of yourself, making a determination of what gaps are not being filled, right? What you might need that is not present. Being open to allowing new personnel in. I know that for a good while we were all like, no new friends. However, sometimes the probability of people changing can be slim to none. The likeliness of people showing up in a way that they have never shown up before. Is it possible? I am a firm believer that anything is possible through Christ that strengthens you. Hello, can I have in our own efforts, I mean, we can really try, like really try hard. Sometimes we can think, thank you. We can think, want, desire for something different. However, generally when you want something different, you do something different. And so if you take inventory and you haven't seen anything different, be realistic about your personnel. And be open to swapping out personnel. Be open to adding on. Be open to releasing personnel, if you will. Only you know where you are right now, today, in your life. Only you and God, of course. Only you know where you're trying to go, what you're trying to do, and you know currently the state, the mindset, if you've been taking inventory, if you've been observant, if you've been listening, if you've been watching, you can determine the current mindset, the current personalities, the current capability of the people in your life. Don't do yourself an injustice of putting more on them than they can actually bear, because I'll tell you the truth. More times than not, people don't want to intentionally disappoint you. Granted, you have your select few. Society has deemed them narcissists. People have tendencies. They may not be full out narcissists. You have those who just are selfish. And let me just say, for the record, all selfishness is not negative. So don't do yourself an injustice, though, by putting more on people than they can bear. You put yourself in a place to be disappointed. You put them in a place to possibly be hurt or disappointed that they couldn't live up to your expectations of them. And depending on their personality, it might cause them to feel lowly or inferior. That's a stretch, but it's possible, because of the expectations you might have placed on them. It's important. It's something that you're definitely gonna have to sip slow on, because if you haven't been taking inventory, if you haven't been observing, if you haven't been listening, getting into that groove can take some time. You have to be mindful of whether or not you've been completely focused on yourself, completely focused on how you think. We just talked the other day about people's experiences, their variables, their stories. And so you might have just been looking at life from your own lens, and there's a way that you show up in the world. There's a way that there is a way that people expect for you to show up. And if you consider yourself at all, if you've changed from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, a year ago, a couple of months ago, days ago, if you've changed, the likeliness that other people have changed too is high, or at least it exists. If you haven't changed, I mean, that might be a totally different happy hour, because experiences do change you. So unless you've been just living inside of a box, I'm almost certain you've probably done some shifting and changing, whether positive or negative. However, if there's some things about you, good or bad, that you just have not changed, that you're not willing to change, that you don't see a reason or a need to change, you're a person just like other people, which means the likeliness or probability of other people feeling that same way or having that same mindset is very probable as well. So take some inventory. Just find out who's in your life, who they are right now, where they stand right now, how they benefit you. I'm a firm believer in the fact that you should not just make withdrawals, but also make deposits in relationships. So you need to take inventory of whether or not deposits are being made in your life. And by all means, I like to look at myself first. So I am not at all saying just to look at everyone else, because believe it or not, whether you considered it or not, you are a part of someone's personnel. So it would behoove you to examine yourself, examine the shifts and the changes that have happened with you, your mindset, what you want, what you don't want. Because you too have to make a decision as to whether or not you still fit on someone else's roster. You might not. Do yourself a favor, do them a favor, and just make it known who you've known me to be, how you've come to expect me to show up, because consistency yields expectation. So whoever you have been more times than you have not, there is an expectation of all those whose roster you sit on, whose personnel spreadsheet you sit on, there's an expectation of you, whether you know it or not, whether it's been communicated or not. However you have shown up consistently, there's an expectation that that's how you're going to show up. And it's really not, I guess with this video, I'm saying it is kind of everyone's responsibility to take some inventory, but not everyone's going to see this video, and not everyone's considering this wisdom. So you can and maybe you shouldn't get too upset when there's an expectation of you that you've kind of consistently acted your way into. I think that makes sense. I mean, in my mind, it makes sense because I know what I'm thinking. However, let me see if I can say that a little better. Try not to get too upset with people who still expect you to show up a certain way, be a certain way, when you have been that way for a very long time, when you've acted a certain way for a very long time, when you've spoken a certain way for a very long time. It's just what happens. Consistency yields expectation. It is your responsibility, I believe, for yourself, for your own peace of mind, to express, whether through actions, being consistent with new actions, being consistent with new speech, being consistent in how you want to show up in the world now, so that you communicate to other people what they kind of should be expecting of you now. Speech, verbal communication has its place. If it's no longer who you are, say so. If you are thinking about what I'm saying and you're taking inventory in your mind about who's in your life, how they've been acting, if there's been a change, if there's been a shift, you could always ask. You could always ask if they are still able, still willing to show up in the way that they have before, because not everyone's bold enough. Like I said before, people don't always intentionally want to disappoint you. I've had my fair share of people attempting to protect my feelings, and so they won't communicate that there's been a shift or a change with them. Verbal communication has its place. So I won't continue to ramble. It's about time for me to lock up. So take some inventory. Know your personnel. You've been doing yourself a disservice and the people in your life a disservice by, if you have not been observant, if you have not been intentional about seeing them, about understanding them. And I know we all have stuff going on. Life be lifing for real. And so at first thought, you might say, don't nobody got time for that. But I'm telling you, lugging around extra weight, extra people who just don't fit anymore, ain't nobody got time for that either. And sometimes it doesn't mean that they have to be dismissed. sometimes there needs to just be a shift in positioning, right? Sometimes when you're taking inventory and you're observing, you learn the strengths, how people best show up because of who they are. Allow them to occupy that space. If you've been holding them in another place or space in your life and they just don't fit there, shift them. Be fair. I think this is my opinion. You can just, take that olive out if you don't care for them. But be fair and express the fact that I need to shift you. Because I'm a firm believer in allowing people to decide for themselves. They may not know that they're not showing up in the way you need them to in the place that they are in. And so just shifting without communication could do more damage to a relationship than there needs to be. However, I am fully aware that some of us don't like to have tough conversations, and that could be tough. But at this day and age, the way life be lifing, there is absolutely no time to waste because you cannot get it back. It's not one of those things where you put money into stocks. Sometimes the stocks drop low and then, you wait a little bit, they jump back up. You got to make your money back and all of that stuff. That is just time you can't get back. Time you can't get back. So do yourself a favor. Do the people you love a favor. And know your personnel. And move forward accordingly. Anyway, y'all, till next time. Like, share, subscribe. Tip your bartender in the comment section. Tell me your thoughts. I'm always willing to tip my cup in your direction. Pour a little something in there. So anyway, I'll holler.